I thought that, honestly, there's nothing more to be said about PPI.
I think we're probably at the start of the end. The deadline was imposed last week, which means the last time you can open a PPI claim is August 2019. And that advertising campaign is to try and tell people if you don't check within the next 2 years, which seems a long time away, but the earlier you get in the queue, the sooner you'll get your money, then you're going to lose out. But there has been this massive rule change. What I'm going to be asking everybody, and no one's going to understand the question, is have you been Plevined? I'll explain more, but if you have been Plevined, and it's millions of people have, there are millions now who are owed PPI compensation, even if they've been rejected in the past or if they've never tried, who weren't before because of a big rule change.
So what is it then?
Well, let's start with PPI. Let's do the basics. Payment protection insurance was systemically missold if you got a loan, a credit card, sometimes a mortgage, an overdraft, any form of debt. It was an insurance policy they hard flogged on top that was meant to protect you in the event that you got sick or that you lost your job, and it would cover your repayments. Well, it wouldn't really cover your repayments. It would only pay them for a year. And sometimes the maximum it could pay out was less than the cost of the policy. Right. But this was missold across the board. Already £27 billion has been paid back. No one's been jailed for fraud, by the way. The biggest fraud we've ever seen. This was scripted mis-selling. Here's some of the ways it was typically missold. They lied to you that it was compulsory. It was never compulsory. They added it without asking you or even after you said no, which is really difficult to get people to complain because they go, oh, well, I didn't have it. I said no. Well, just the fact you said no doesn't mean you didn't have it, because one of the mis-selling routes was they added it without telling you. They lied to you to say this is the only way you'll get a better deal. Well, it wasn't part of the credit scoring process. That's not true. And they didn't check whether it was suitable for you. Classic case of mis-selling. You were self-employed and they sold you unemployment cover. But it wouldn't cover you because you were self-employed. Or you had a pre-existing condition that they wouldn't pay out for, but they didn't tell you about it. That's why £27 billion has been missold. And what I'm saying to everybody is check now if you had PPI. There's no back time limit. People always think there is. If it was 20 years ago, you are still eligible for a payout.
How do you check? Do you have to have all your bank statements and all your stuff?
OK, well, if it's in the last 6 years, you can ask the bank. Otherwise, it's going to be much more difficult without evidence. But often people don't even remember who their lender was, which you can get from your credit file will tell you who your lender was. Hopefully, the banks are now playing ball. This is all very new. Since last week, the game has changed, and they will give you the information whether you've had PPI or not. In the many meetings I had with the regulator about this deadline, which I objected to, but they brought it in, one of the things I said to them was, if you're going to do it, make it easy for people to find if they've got PPI.
So you have to find that out. They're never, ever going to come to you and tell you?
In some circumstances, they will, but you need to assume that you won't be told about it. Now, you do not need to pay anybody to do this. People often ask me, who's the best PPI claims company? And I tend to bash my head against a wall because for years I've been saying you can do this for free yourself. There are free tools online that will help you do this from a number of different sources. And there's lots of information if you don't know who your lender was, if you haven't got your paperwork, if you're not sure whether it was PPI or not. There's lots and lots of free information. And if you do it yourself for free, you get all the money back. If you use a company who, frankly, you then have to fill in their forms and they fill in other forms for you, they'll take roughly 30% of what you're entitled to back. And if you're sitting there thinking it wasn't me, remember, if you've had a loan, a credit card, a mortgage or an overdraft or a catalogue debt in the last 20 years, it is worth checking. Paul Smith tweeted me, I get thousands like this. This isn't a, a one-off example. Thousands and thousands like this. Paul Smith, seen you banging on about PPI for years, finally thought I'd give it a try. Got £18,000 back.
Oh, my goodness.
Nowhere near the biggest I've had. I've had up to £90,000. £20,000, £30,000 and £40,000 are not atypical, but a standard payout is normally about £3,000. But that's the size. That's why we're banging on about doing this.